Today's podcast is brought to you by Schiffer Craft. Since 1973, Schiffer Publishing has provided the craft industry with world-renowned authors and insightful books. With topics ranging from ceramics to fiber and textiles, floral design, glass art, woodworking, metal craft, and more. Turn to Schiffer Craft for expert knowledge and inspiration. Thank you so much, Schiffer Craft. And now, here's the show. Welcome to episode 197 of the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals where you can strengthen your creative business, stay up to date on industry news, and build connections within our supportive trade association. Check it out at craftindustrｙalliance.org. Today on the show, we're talking about pivoting from quilting to needlepoint with my guest, Kristi Schroeder Larson. Texas native Kristi Schroeder Larson is the creator of Initial K Studio, offering modern quilt patterns and needlepoint designs to the market. Her designs are inspired by travel as well as by putting her modern twist on classic quilt blocks. Kristi's book, Southwest Modern, was published by Lucky Spool Media in 2017, blending a quilting book with a travelogue in the form of a beautiful coffee table book. You can follow her daily life with her two young sons and product development on Instagram at Initial K Studio. Kristi Schroeder Larson, welcome.
Thank you so much, Abby.
It's great to have you. And I know we met in person once, and I kind of think it was at QuiltCon, maybe. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was at QuiltCon because it was the QuiltCon with a beautiful. We were both standing in front of the diamond quilt, the winner.
Yes, the winner.
And I think you and I introduced myself to you because I recognized you, and we just started chatting.
Yeah, so, yes, I remember that now. That was an incredible quilt.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, it's fun to have you here again to chat more about your career and especially about sort of more recent business developments, which I'm excited to get to. But maybe you can start by telling us kind of about your childhood and where you grew up. I think you were a Texas native. Is that right?
I am born and bred Texan. I grew up in South Texas in a small town on the coast called Fort Lavaca. And mother, as she would say, my mom, Kay, is very artsy-fartsy. So I grew up in a very creative, at least on her side, like very creative, artsy. I was enrolled in art classes from when I was really little. And then I actually went to boarding school in Indiana. And then I decided, as my mom joked, that they OD'd in my independence when they were raising me. I decided to go to college out in Washington State, in Tacoma, at a small school called University of Puget Sound. And I absolutely loved it. So went to college there. My dad was like pushing me to major in business. My mom said to major in art. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be a starving artist. So then I decided to be an English major. Senior year of college, I finally took an art elective and realized that my mom was right.
They always are. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. So I graduated with a degree in English, and I didn't want to be a lawyer or teacher. And so I actually moved back to Texas and got my second degree at Texas State in graphic design. So I lived in Austin for 3 years while I went to school down in San Marcos. And then I graduated and then moved to Chicago and started working for Accenture, doing all of like their brand management with a team of people. We were actually hired by a different company, but Accenture was our client. So that was my first job for graphic design, and it's amazing. It was like branding 101, and I absolutely loved it. I learned all the ins and outs of brand management and just how that all happens and works. And I worked with a ton of different agencies because we had to review all of the print materials before they were released to the public. And electronic. So I was a part of a team of people that we were basically reviewing things to make sure they were correct for brand standards. If they weren't, then we had to let them know that they needed to make all these changes or give them suggestions how to make it brand appliant. So
I almost feel
that's
like,
how I got my start.
yeah, I almost feel like those first jobs, it's almost like another degree in a way because you're like
It is.
applying, you're using the skills that you learned when you were in school, but now you get the opportunity to actually apply them in a real world context. And of course, all these other people are like more senior than you and have been doing this for a long time. And you're the new person on the block. And so you kind of like have this period where you don't know what you're doing and then you learn how it all works for real,
Yeah. Yeah. It was great. I loved it. And my boss was amazing. It was a team of women. It was amazing. Like I would still be there if not for the Chicago winters. So I lasted 2 years in Chicago, and then winter was coming, and I was like, I have to get out. It was too cold for me. So I moved to San Francisco and worked for a experiential marketing company. So we were part of a team. I was part of a company that basically, like, if Microsoft was launching a new product, we were part of that team that, if it was something to, like a conference, like if there was also like, there was a lot of, Fortune 500 companies that were clients, or like HP, oh gosh, who else? Not Dell, Microsoft. It's just, all those companies down the West Coast. eBay, we tried to get Facebook. That was when Facebook was in the beginning, so it didn't happen. But, so that was like 2005, I think, was when I was in Chicago. When I was in San Francisco, and I was there for another year.
And what is experiential marketing? What does that mean? It's like
so it's like, Levi's was one of our clients. So if they were releasing a new jean, and they wanted people to come into their store to try on the jeans. So it was like an event that would happen based on a product.
Like kind of like a launch event, almost like a mixture between like a party, but nowadays it would have like influencers who came and there would be lots of photo opportunities for Instagram and stuff like that.
Yeah, nowadays, yes, definitely. But back then, I think it was more of like, trying to get the public involved or more people to show up at the store. But then as far as, we did a lot of conferences for companies as well. So when companies were releasing, either they're having their annual conference, or if they're releasing a new product and they want other employees to know about it or experience it or talk about it. So that was the other thing. So,
so interesting. That's a totally different aspect of branding, It
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And it was a good job. I learned a lot of lessons, and I also learned like what I did not want to do.
Sure. Which is also super valuable. Yeah. What parts of it were not such a great fit for your personality?
The management team.
Okay.
Basically.
Yeah.
Management was like complete opposite of where I came from, where like my manager in Chicago, like she was like, I hired you for a reason. She was like, you're smart, you communicate well. Like, she left me alone and let me do my work. And at this other company, it was the complete opposite, where I was micromanaged to a T. And my personality, I do not do well when I'm micromanaged. No one does well when they're micromanaged.
Nobody really does. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so I know you at some point ended up working at Neiman Marcus.
I did. Yeah. So what I did from there was, I left San Francisco. I actually got a great job offer with a company in Dallas. It was an architecture firm called Corgan, and I was there for 6.5 years, almost 7 years. And that was like another great company culture. Their work-life balance. The team of people, all the architects, interior designers I worked with were incredible, amazing people. But I went advanced as far as I could in the company, and then I was just basically plateaued, and I couldn't advance anymore. And so that's when I discovered the job over at Neiman. So yeah, I switched from Corgan to Neiman Marcus. And
what were you designing at Neiman Marcus? Were you actually like designing clothing or just branding for them, or?
I was doing branding and marketing. So I was doing all of their print materials, and then I was doing the branding for their In Circle Club members. So basically I did all the print work that was like mailers, and then all the signage and everything that was in the store. I basically did everything but the book. So the book was that's a whole nother team that's just in charge of putting that beautiful book together monthly or I can't remember how many times. I think they do it every month. So that was a different team of designers, but we all worked like on the same floor. Basically, we all sat next to each other.
Okay.
And I was there for a year. And by that time, I think I'd started picking up quilting and sewing Well, I was working at Corgan because I was, wanted to do something creative when I went home, but I didn't want to sit in front of a computer. So that's how I kind of got into sewing.
Was your mom like showing you how to do that, or was that just how were you learning when you were sort of just picking it up to do as a hobby?
Oh, my mom has been trying to get me to quilt for years. Like, again, mom knows best. But what really happened was I was out to brunch with friends in Dallas, and I walked past this modern fabric store called Citycraft, and I was like, wait a minute. I've never seen fabrics like this. Like Anna Maria Horner was there. She had a line of solids. It was just really great fabric that to me appealed to my design sense. And, growing up, my mom took me to all of her quilt shops, which were
more traditional.
Different.
Yeah, more traditional style. Yeah.
Packed to the gills. I remember walking in one and I was like, I cannot sit here. And I just told my mom, I was like, I want to be in the car.
I'll too cluttered, too much merchandise everywhere. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I've discovered Citycraft, beautiful fabric. They offered classes, and then I think this was in the fall, and my friends and I were going to have a big dinner party for Christmas. And so I bought some fabric and took it home for Thanksgiving and asked my mom to make these placemats for me. And my mom was like, how many do you need? I was like, about 20. And she was like, I will show you how to make them. So she got, she had a little Singer featherweight out, and she showed me how to make one. And I remember being like, oh, this isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. So that's how I learned how to sew. Okay. And then I went back to Dallas and started taking classes at night because Citycraft had a ton of sewing classes. And that's how I learned.
I think that's such an interesting story because you're kind of in that way, kind of the newer generation of quilters. So what appealed to you, you knew about it through your mom, but what appealed to you was seeing this aesthetic of modern fabrics and then the merchandising in a more modern shop, right? That's what appealed to you. And then being able to take those classes at night so that you're working full time, you're busy, you're professional, and classes at night are the ones that, you can get to.
It was great. I mean, Callie her shop was amazing, and she offered a ton of classes. It was great. And the first quilting class I took, by this wonderful woman named Susan Ketterer. And she's actually now, if I get commission queries that I don't have time to do, I'll call her up and be like, I've got this. Can you do this for me? And so now it's just funny to think that was back in 2014, 2015. So 6-7 years ago, I meet Susan, and now it's
you're peers. Yeah. Yeah.
But she taught me how to make my first quilt, honestly, for a class. And she was amazing. She was such a great teacher. So, so that's kind of what happened. So basically, I was at Neiman's for a year, and, after moving so much and working at all these different companies, by that point I was super burnt out. Because I'm the type of person, if I'm going to do a job, I'm going to do it well. So there was times when it was a lot of long hours, and, modern quilting was really picking up momentum. And I was looking at all the designers out there and what they were doing. And I remember thinking I can do what they're doing. I have all the skill sets, with my graphic design background. I know how to, put together a print booklet. That's not a problem, a print pattern. So I quit my job at Neiman's, and my dad was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I
bet. What? You're doing what? And I was like, yep, I don't care. I'm doing this. So I launched my website, and then I was kind of in the beginning doing more commission, baby quilts and stuff. And then I partnered. Callie wanted me to design a quilt because Robert Kaufman was coming out with their new solids. So that was back in 2014. And that's how I designed the Cascade quilt, which was my first pattern. And I think she published it. I think it was on Pinterest. And then Nicole Ramirez from Robert Kaufman, she doesn't work there anymore, but she saw my quilt on Pinterest, and she contacted me directly and then asked me if I would be interested in turning it into a quilt pattern. And that is how my quilt pattern business got started. So of course I told her yes, and then I had to go back and figure out how to turn it into a pattern.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's super cool. So a couple of questions. One is, how did you come up with the name Initial K? I mean, obviously that's your first initial for your first name, but was there a thought process that went into naming your business?
Yeah, so my mom is really big into initials. So we have the same initials, or we used to before I got married. And so, I thought about, naming it Kristi Schroeder Studios, but then I was like, well, if I get married, I don't want to change my business name. I didn't want to get into all of that. And then I just thought long term, I didn't want my full name to be associated with my company. And so that's how I came up with Initial K.
Yeah. And one of the nice things about it, which we'll get to later in this story, but is that it isn't confining. In other words, you didn't call it like Kristi Quilts or Initial K Quilts or something. Like it's just, the Instagram handle has studio after it. Like studio, it could really be anything. So if it's not quilts right now and it's something else and then later it's something else, it's all good.
Yeah, definitely. I kind of did a deep dive on, again, back to branding and, marketing and all of that. Like in the beginning, it took me a while to get there, but I had some other ideas, but it was going to be more on the quilting side of things. So I'm very glad now that you mentioned all of that.
Yeah, it is right. It is flexible. And then as far as like your branding and marketing experience, of which you had pretty extensive at that point, working with a lot of different companies in different settings, experiences, conferences, print materials, books, all these different things that you created, branding, guidelines, and all of that. I'm wondering, when you did start your own business, like what were some of the guiding principles that you brought to it from those experiences, as far as from like a branding perspective, like knowing I need to have, this logo and these formats, these colors, just all of that stuff that sometimes somebody who doesn't have a branding background doesn't even realize they're seeing when they see a brand. You know what I mean? It's like they don't even notice it because it's so seamless and like,
as it's supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think I worked on my identity first before I launched. So I came up with, I had my little K mark, which I'm no longer am using it anymore. But yeah, I basically created like a little visual identity or branding guideline for myself. Like I picked out the type, picked out the colors that I thought were going to be good. And, like any brand, when you start with one look and feel, it eventually starts to evolve into another, just because as you start your business and you grow and change, so does your businesses. So I things are a little bit different now with how mine looks. But it's still the same. I wanted to keep mine. I actually hired somebody else to do my branding for my rebranding, just because I didn't have the time nor the headspace to do it. And I'd been wanting a change for a while. So I hooked up with two designers in Dallas, and they did a great job. But I told them, we had a long discussion about, like, do we do a stylized K? Do we not? And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be stuck with something that's stylized now that's going to, 5 years from now look very dated. So that's how I changed my logo, just to have the little initial K. The K is like in the little box on my website. And my colors are pretty reflective of what my pattern, like my color palettes I like to use in my patterns, which that may change later on, but which I'm okay with. So I really like the progression of it. So but it's hard. Like branding is hard. If you're a lay person and you're not familiar with it, you don't realize that you're like, oh, you see something that's very seamless, but there is a team of people behind that make it look very seamless.
That's 100% true. And it can help to like either have the background, or if you don't have the background, almost like be in business for a while so that you understand what it is you want the look to be. Because as you said, you had a long conversation just about the font of the K, right? And so it's like, how can you really engage in those long conversations if you haven't had any experience inside this brand and know, like, so it's almost like you can launch with like a DIY version, but then when you're ready and you've had some time in it, then you can really speak in an informed way about what you want.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, like, that's the beauty of the internet and Pinterest and Google, like Google search. If you see something, a brand, or if you see an advertisement or whatever, and you're like, I really like that color palette, or I really like how that letter looks. I save a ton of stuff that I come across that I think is intriguing, that I like personally. And then, when I had the design conversation with Deloche Branding, they saw my website, they saw my work, and we really did seamlessly come together with with what we came up with.
Yeah. And you can keep
you know,
those on like a private Pinterest board. So it's not something that you're necessarily sharing with the world, but it's almost like using Pinterest for what Pinterest is supposed to be used for, which is basically like a pin board where you're keeping your ideas. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And it's a good idea to track them so that when you do need them, you have them. Yeah.
And the more you start pinning things, then it's funny when you go back a year later and you're like, oh, I really do like this one. You'll see a certain palette pop up or a certain style, like then it becomes even more clear, like the direction that you want to go. So I'd say for people who aren't, who are starting out or who want to get their branding, if they're, an entrepreneur, I kind of feel like just start saving things that catch your eye. And then like 6 months later, take a look at it and you'll start to see an evolution of your style.
I want to take a minute now to talk about our sponsor, Schiffer Craft. Schiffer Publishing has been a leading publisher in the craft industry for 5 decades. Their mission is to build the knowledge base for craft communities large and small, while staying ahead of trends in the industry. Schiffer Craft's titles range in topics from ceramics, fiber and textiles, floral design, glass art, woodworking, metal craft and jewelry, and leather, painting, and more. By partnering with renowned artists, craftspeople, makers, authors, and organizations, they've built a legacy of providing expert knowledge and inspirational books to the industry. Whether someone's a beginner or an expert, their books provide the perfect amount of inspiration, examples, how-to, and instructions needed to succeed. Along with crafting high-quality books, Schiffer Craft partners with groups, museums, and businesses to help extend their mission in craft, including organizations like the Barnes Foundation, the Center of Art and Wood, Quilts of Valor, Harrisville Designs, the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco, Mackenzie Childs, the Morse Museum of American Art, and many more. Also, their custom publishing arm provides a full suite of sophisticated services to creatives and organizations looking to convey their value in a powerful way. Visit their website, www.schiffercraft.com, and click on Submit a Proposal to see what magic you can make together and provide to the industry. Remember to sign up for their mailing list so you can be the first to know about exclusive offers on upcoming craft titles. You can sign up at www.schiffercraft.com. Thank you so much, Schiffer Craft. And now, back to my conversation with Kristi. You had that one pattern that came about because a fabric company saw your quilt and asked, would you turn it into a pattern? And so that kind of started the pattern business side in addition to the commission pieces.
Yes.
And so then you went on to develop other ones and then also to write this book.
Yes. So I wrote Southwest Modern. That was published in 2017. I pitched it to Suzanne at QuiltCon in Pasadena. I think, was that in 2015, 2016? 2015, I think. I can't remember when it was in Pasadena. But I pitched it to her that February, and she was like, "This is really interesting." And she basically was like, "I like your idea," because I told her I wanted to be a traveling quilt book. And she said to write a proposal. So I went home and that was in February. I think I spent like 6 weeks on it, like 6 to 8 weeks, like designed all the quilts, did all the design work in the very beginning. And I started the proposal, and then we signed the contract that summer.
And that's actually kind of unusual. You don't actually have to design all the quilts before you submit. I mean, as part of the book proposal, like you can have like a design or two, and then like a table of contents and idea of where you're headed. Yeah. But like, just so people don't get like concerned that I have to write this whole book before I submit it.
No, I mean, I did the table of contents, and I had submitted a few ideas, and Suzanne was like, she wanted to see more designs. Like she wanted to see exactly what I was picturing. So then I just went back and like spent a week and knocked it all out. So, we signed it then, and I'm glad that we did, because we signed it that summer. And that was when because by then I was working for myself, and I decided to move from Dallas to Austin to be closer to my family who was still on the coast, in Corpus Christi and Port Aransas. So I moved to Austin, and that's like a 3 hour drive from my family. So I moved to Austin in August, and then I did all the I produced half the quilts in like 6 weeks. And then we had to go in October with the photographer who I used to work with at my architecture firm. So I was able to hire him to do all the photography for
Wonderful.
the book.
Yeah. And the photography is just beautiful. It's so stark and bright. And like you shared one, a still from that book project on your Instagram recently. And I was like, oh, that's from the book. Like it's very identifiably, do you know what I mean? Like a piece of that book, you know? So yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. So the photographer is Kurt Griesbach, and he still works for Corgan, and he is an amazing photographer. He's an amazing human. Like I loved working with him when I was there. So, again, it's like the relationship that you establish, come full circle. But I remember contacting him and I was like, hey, I've got this project. I really want you to do this for me. What do you think? And he was like, sign me up. But basically I had to pitch him to Suzanne, and then Suzanne had to, she hired him separately to do the book. But Kurt and I worked really well together, and it was the New Mexico photo shoot was like a 3-day whirlwind of us like getting up at 6 a.m. and going out and photographing and coming back at 6 or 7. And my mom was with us. So she was like making dinner for us. And then we'd go over all the images and plan out the next day, when I was like, okay, this is working, this isn't working. And then we'd go back out and keep shooting. So that's what we did. And then we wrapped it up in 3 days. And then I went back to Austin and made the second half of the book, all the quilts. And then we went to West Texas in February and shot the rest of the quilts. And my now husband was with us. He was our driver, my boyfriend at the time. And I remember that trip being like, this is either going to make the relationship or break it. It ended up making it. So it was great. Like it was exactly, I knew exactly where I wanted to photograph the quilts, where they are photographed, the ones that I designed for those specific places. Like I knew exactly in my head, this is where I want to go. This is what this is going to look like. And Kurt just brought it to fruition. And I remember having a moment like, in the middle of it, just being like, this is becoming a reality. And then I started freaking out because it was becoming a reality. And then I was so worried that the book wasn't going to do well. And, it's all the things that the creatives, you can psych yourself out. But I was very, very happy with the end of the book. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think it also speaks a lot to Suzanne Woods. May she rest in peace, because she was a wonderful force in the industry. And I think the publishing house that she founded and created, Lucky Spool, really published different kinds of books that were really beautiful. She truly understood quilting, and she wasn't afraid to try something new and different, and, with a totally different kind of cover or just a totally different kind of concept, and really created a wonderful legacy, I feel like.
She did. I mean, she was the only person that I trusted my book with, my idea with. She was the only one. I mean, I did a lot of research and I met a lot of the other publishers, and they're all lovely, amazing companies and women who are running it. But I knew my vision and I knew what I wanted to do. And after talking to Suzanne, like I knew she was the one who was going to give me the ability to do what I wanted to 100%.
Yeah.
Like she was just basically like, take it and run with it. And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah.
She did. I mean, there's so many days that I think about her and I get sad because of her, her 2 boys and all of that. But she left such a great legacy.
She really did.
What an amazing thing to leave to your family.
I know. No, totally. I understand, because I saw her at Quilt Market, I guess shortly before she got sick again. It just was very, very sad. So I hear you. And I think, there are special people in this industry who really do special things and leave an important stamp. And she was one of them. So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you had this book and you had more patterns. Clearly, I think one of the experiences of writing a book is that you write so many patterns for the book that then you're just like on a deadline, like having to get them done in 6 weeks or whatever it was, that then, you know, writing a single pattern that becomes, you know, a PDF or even a print pattern, it stops being so daunting seeming, like you've just been in that rhythm. At least for me, like that's how it was. After I wrote my book, I was like, well, I've had to write one of these every 3 weeks, so I'll just keep going, you know?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, I mean, I kept writing patterns. And I'd been writing a few before the book. You know, again, it is once you get into a rhythm, you know what you need to do. You know the whole ins and outs of it. So I kept doing the patterns, and then I got married, and the book was published within a week of each other. So that was in 2017. That was in October. And then then it was like the book was released, and then doing a few teaching things and tours, and then lo and behold, my oldest showed up 9 months later. So I got pregnant, and then I had my son. And at that point, like I remember telling my husband, like, I'm going to try and keep working. I still want to develop more patterns and this and that. And I started to try it, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like, so I took a break. I took a break from writing my patterns, and I kind of took a break from business. And then this kind of segues in how I like fell into needlepoint. But my oldest was diagnosed at 4 months old. We gave him formula for the first time at 4 months, and he had a anaphylaxis allergic reaction, and we had to rush him to the hospital. And we discovered he was allergic to dairy. And he was 5 pounds, 15 ounces. So he was in the 1%. So my pediatrician was like, you really need to start like upping your supply. So I had to start pumping around the clock, which is not, I mean, this is TMI, but like pumping is not a pleasant
I have
thing.
3 kids. I nurse 3 kids. I get it. I hear you.
Yeah. So I had to start pumping. She was basically like, you have to give him this X amount of ounces a day to get his weight up and to make sure, he's thriving. So I had to pump around the clock. And I remember being like, I'm going crazy. Like, it was so hard. And so I discovered Emily Peacock, and she is a British designer who has these amazing cross stitch kits that you can buy. And it's basically, the British do their needlepoint or cross stitch is a little different in that they offer kits with a blank canvas, and they have a printout of the design on a grid, and then they send you all the thread that goes with it. So I bought like 2 of Emily's kits, and that is what I did to keep my sanity while I was pumping.
Love it. And they're kind of like animals, like she's like a crab, and like that. Yeah. And they're they're modern, but they have like a graphic, like a pretty strong graphic.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So I stitched the prawn, Erica the prawn, and Tia the crab for my niece and nephew while I was pumping for my son. And that really did like help my sanity get through everything. And then I got pregnant with my second kiddo soon after Dylan's first birthday. So my boys were 21 months apart. And I think it was really like while I was kind of taking a break from the quilting that I was just like, I'm going to look into this needlepoint side of things, just because it was so therapeutic for me to do while I was like trying to, keep my mind from going crazy from pumping. And I had to pump again for my second child exclusively. So I really did. I don't know. It's just like the business idea where I was like, I think I just want to try something different, because the quilting, I don't know if it's because when I started my business and how I did my patterns, and then I wrote my book, like there was so much stuff that I did in such a short period of time.
Right. It sounds like that
I feel like I was just like, I needed a break from it. Like, and I think that happened naturally because of my firstborn showing up. And then with Drew, my secondborn, I had him last April. So that was in the height of the pandemic.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then unfortunately I had some really serious major post-labor complications, and I had 3 surgeries in 2 weeks, and the last surgery 2 weeks postpartum. So I had one right after he was born. I had to have an emergency DNC awake because my placenta wouldn't come out, and so that was not good. And then I had a second DNC a week later because I was still like having complications, like super high fever and not recovering. And then I had to go back into the hospital. Okay. And this is like during COVID where I had to walk in by
Oh
myself,
my gosh.
1 week postpartum. I was a hot
Oh,
mess,
oh.
being so sick. And then after the second DNC, I still wasn't doing well. Like a week later, I called my doctor and I was like, something is wrong. Like something is wrong and I don't know what it is. And so I went back to the hospital and they did an MRI and there was a mass still in my uterus. And she came back like an hour later and was like, we have to do an emergency hysterectomy. And I was just like,
Oh my gosh.
okay. Like,
yeah.
So that was 2 weeks postpartum. It was super brutal. And, physically it was hard. Mentally, I was like, I don't even know how to react to it. My doctor was just like, she's like, you're so calm. And I just looked at her and I was like, I can't process
I'm
this.
just like numb, right? It's like,
I was totally just like, I was basically just like, I just want to recover so I can go back home and take care of my boys. Like, that was what I told her. I was just like, this is me surviving. I will survive. And then the nurses on the floor, on the labor and delivery floor were so amazing that they advocated. They called, I guess the head person was like, her husband needs to be in a room whenever she wakes up from the surgery. Because it was, again, COVID. I had already had my baby, so he wasn't, wasn't to be in the hospital with me. And luckily he was there when I woke up from surgery.
Oh, good.
But that, honestly, that whole episode afterwards, before Drew showed up, like I had started doing some product research on turning my quilt designs into needlepoint canvas. So I was working on my own samples, but I really dove into it after I got home, like after I was, 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, I had to stay in bed the whole time and recover. And that really helped me. Needlepoint really did help me not get over, but help me process my trauma.
Get through. Yeah, exactly. And I wondered when, needlepoint is a whole other area of creativity. So I've done some articles and things like that about needlepoint and needlepoint designers. And you mentioned in the UK, you, as a consumer, you get a blank canvas and then a printed pattern and then all the threads that you need. But then there's also these hand painted canvases that are extremely expensive where, right? Okay. And then my understanding with those though, is that the artist paints the original and then you send it somewhere and it's often like overseas, like to the Philippines or something. And then all of the reproductions of it are hand painted, but they're hand painted by other people. And that seemed to be like what I understood from the way this works. So tell us what you learned when you were kind of diving into some market research on how to create needlepoint canvases.
So I touched base actually with a fabulous needlepoint designer, Tess Cavalli of Hello Tess Design. And I reached out to her and she had been following me on Instagram for a long time. So she was like, so we got it. It was just really like the serendipitous moment. And I was like, hey, do you mind if I talk to you? I'm really interested in doing this side of my business. And she really was such a great mentor. And she kind of did give me the ins and outs of like, okay, this is the lay of the land. This is what happens. This is, the progress. But it was also during the pandemic. So a ton of new needlepoint designers were popping up, because people had time to be at home or some people no longer had jobs, like whatever. So a lot of needlepoint designers, new designers were coming into the market. And then, I'm not keeping up with quilting as much, but in the needlepoint industry, like the supply chain changed because of COVID. And so, there was a flood of new designers who were trying to reach out to the painting service companies to do their designs, but the painting service companies didn't have, the resources to keep up with the demand, one, because of COVID, and two, they needed to keep their workers safe. So a lot of the time, like the production timelines changed to where what would normally take 8 to 12 weeks now takes like 6 to 8 months of getting your designs painted and produced. But luckily I was able to find a company, US based, but they do the production in China. And I reached out to this company and was just like, I'm a new designer. I've got again, like me being the, graphic designer, I had a proposal created. I created a proposal with all the canvases that I wanted to be produced. And I had like the size, the colorways, like everything spelled out. So there was no question, like everything was crystal clear. And he came back and told me the estimate of how much it would cost to do. But I did. I painted. The art needlepoint designer will paint a master, and then the master gets sent to the company, and then that's when they go. And the difference between a painted canvas and a printed canvas, when it's painted, it's called stitch paint. So whenever you're needlepointing the canvas, there's no question. You know exactly what color goes in each intersection. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For sometimes with the printing process with the canvas, you know, the print, if it's screen printed, which I think they are, I'm not exactly sure how printed needlepoint canvases are produced, but you know, the printing could shift. And so there's a question when you get to a section, you're like, oh, do I stitch it in black or do I stitch it in white? Like, because it's not clear where the intersection is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%, which is why it needs to be hand painted.
And that's why the hand painted canvases are more expensive. But, you know, I think people who like quilters, needlepointers, you know, it's an art. You know, you stitch it. It's an art. It's a craft. It's everything is done by hand. And I think needlepointers are extremely particular, just like quilters are.
Yeah, you know, it's the same thing with like hand knit sweaters and things like that, where it's like, yeah, you could get the less expensive material, but if you're going to spend, you know, 22 hours making the sweater, do you really want it to be done? Like, what material do you want to use? You know, so that's 100%. Kind of the investment of time and the investment of money on materials kind of equal one another in that way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the biggest difference. So it's called, the hand painted canvases, they're stitch painted because it leaves out the guesswork when you're actually needlepointing it.
Okay. But I saw like on the listings in your e-commerce shop for these that you need to clarify to people that they are not pre-stitched. And I thought that was really interesting because I was like, she wouldn't have written that if someone didn't buy it thinking it was pre-stitched and then get upset. So I wondered if when, you know, it's kind of like when you're selling PDF quilt patterns or PDF sewing patterns in general, you need to make very clear to people, look, this is a digital file. It's going to be delivered to you in a PDF version. It's not the finished quilt or whatever. And it's not a printed pattern. Like you have to really spell that out. So I wondered when you're making the e-commerce listings for needlepoint, what kinds of things do you have to like make crystal clear to the consumer?
Yeah, well, I put that line in there based on doing the research of other needlepointers. Like I noticed they all put that last little bit at the end, and I was like, oh, I guess this may have been a problem in the past.
Right. Okay.
I just want to make it crystal clear, but you know, for the listing, like stitch painted, like I think that's the number one thing is stitch paint because, you know, some people may balk at the pricing, but I'm like, this is something that's been hand painted. And plus like the design work that goes into it to figure out, you know, the right is, you know, it's just part of why it's price point the way it is because we figure out everything before you have to, the designer does. And then the size and, I need to go back in because I'm going to be offering my canvases as needlepoint kits. So they'll get the fibers as well as the canvas and the needle. And then I'll probably actually put the colorway of the colors that I picked as well in the product listing for the people who just want to buy the canvas and then go to the, you know, their local needlepoint shop.
Right.
And buy it themselves, which I think is great. You know, I for me, it's like, I want to support myself, but I also want to support other businesses, you know, local needlepoint shops. So
absolutely. So we have one here in Wellesley where I live. There's a local needlepoint shop in my town. So definitely hear that, you know, wanting to support them. But at the same time, I think kits are such a good idea because the consumer gets everything they need and then they're able to start right away and don't have to hunt down specific colors that they may not be able to find. So, you know,
especially for the person who's a working professional that doesn't have time to go. I mean, that to me really was like who I was thinking about was the customer, you know, the consumer who has a full-time job or could be, you know, stay-at-home mom who doesn't have who does not have the time to go out to their local needlepoint shop to pick up what they need. Like, you know, so I kind of, you know, I think there's two different schools of thought. And I think it's the same kind of applies in the quilt industry that I've heard, you know, the old school. Some people don't want to work with needlepoint designers who have a retail site. Local needlepoint shops only want to work with a designer who only offers wholesale only. Which I kind of am like, I understand that thinking, but at the same time, I'm like, we're all here to help out each other. Because if I come up with a design or something, a new person, like a quilter sees I'm doing needlepoint and they're like, oh, that's interesting, and they buy one of my canvases, once they finish it, they're going to want to do another one.
Right.
So they'll go to their local needlepoint shop and discover a whole new world of all these different designers who are absolutely amazing. I mean, that's what I felt like when I fell into the needlepoint industry and discovering all these designers who are also flippin' talented and incredible and different and totally different from quilting. Like, I think that's why I love it so much. It's just I'm learning so much more and discovering something new and challenging myself. So I don't know. Like, I hope. I'm a little nervous with me launching all of this because I've put a lot of time and effort and money into my inventory, and I'm hoping everything will sell so I can pay my bills. I mean, I'll be able to pay my bills, but I'm hoping I'll be able to pick up some wholesale accounts on the needlepoint side.
Yeah. Yeah. And how are you thinking about trade shows? Obviously, everything was virtual this past year, but the world is starting to open up again, and we're starting to see in-person trade shows pop back up on the calendar in the end of 2021 into 2022. Yeah. And so I don't know if you have been to maybe Quilt Market in the past or not, or how are you thinking about, trade shows for this new product line in the future? Are you considering those? I know it's hard to travel with 2 little kids too.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I mean, I'm not going to travel with my boys, especially because, it's post-COVID, but they're so little. I don't want to expose them because they're not going to get the vaccine anytime soon, obviously. So it's really like working with my husband and his work schedule, and then either convincing my mom, KK, to come up and help my husband out if I have to be gone for 5 days. But I don't know. I was thinking about that. I don't know. Like, I love going to Quilt Market because, I'm in Texas, so that's like a short drive for me to go to Houston.
Sure.
And I love going to Quilt Market to see everyone and see what the trends are and see what all the designers are doing and the fabric companies. I just don't know, like, with my transition to needlepoint, if going to Quilt Market will help me. Maybe it will, because I feel like it goes hand in hand being in a creative industry. But they do have 2 conferences or 2 trade shows for the needlepoint market. One's in October or September in Dallas, and then the other one in the spring is in Florida.
Yeah, Destination Dallas, and then I forgot what's the springtime needlepoint show or whatever it's called. Yeah.
So I'm hoping to make it to one of those, but then it also depends on because someone told me, like, when you go to the needlepoint market, like, you need to have all of your inventory
because it's cash and carry. Yeah, a lot of them are they're suite style shows, so that they're not in a convention center; they're in hotel suites. You come into each person's suite, you look around, and then it's really you buy what you want, and you buy inventory at the show, which is very different from Quilt Market.
Yeah, it's the complete opposite.
Yes.
And then I'm like, oh gosh, like that's like, putting a lot of money into inventory that you're like not even sure it's going to sell, because I'm doing retail as well as wholesale. So that's kind of the I don't know if I'm definitely going to go to the market. I'll definitely go to Destination Dallas, maybe just to go and check it out and see and network and talk to other people. But I don't know if I think it just depends on how this first launch goes this summer with my canvases and how well they sell.
Yeah, I was really interested to hear from you that there was a lot of new needlepoint designers coming into the market during COVID, because I was not clued into that, but that's really interesting to hear. I mean, I know a lot more people pursued, handwork of all different kinds, but that's interesting that there's been new designers. So, as these trade shows come back online, are back in person, I'll be interested to see too whether the presence of these new designers changes those shows, or whether COVID itself changed those shows in some ways that have a lasting impact too. So that'll be interesting to observe.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, definitely. I think it's going to be. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next, couple years. What happens. But I'm also, after talking to a couple of shops that were basically, they were like, we're not they basically said, your work is great, but we only work with designers who have wholesale line only. Now I'm like, okay, well, now I've got to design a wholesale line only of.
Right. That would be another strategy where you have some that are available direct to consumer from a retail standpoint on your own site. And then you have an exclusive line that's just wholesale. So that's another interesting way to approach this. So,
I'm working on that now.
That's cool. Yeah. That's a cool strategy.
Which is good.
Yeah. Well, I love this pivot, and I think that it's encouraging because our lives change. I mean, that's just the reality. And when you are the brand and it's just you, you have to be able to embrace that change. Otherwise, you're going to give up and just get out of the industry entirely. So this was a way for you to go from keeping your aesthetic, keeping your design style, keeping your creativity, but to go from, and it's not that you won't go back to quilting or, continue to pursue them side by side or completely change and do something totally different, under the Initial K brand in the future. But I think it's just a good message to say you can pivot and change, and your audience will come with you. You don't have to start a new Instagram and a new brand.
Yeah. I think it's been, plus it's keeping my sanity, my mental health. That was the number one reason why I decided to pivot to needlepoint, because it really truly did help me recover from all of my trauma. And I think it's so important for people nowadays to a lot of the designers and people that I follow in the needlepoint industry, a lot of people talk about mental health and how much needlepoint has helped them not recover, but just get better. And it's so therapeutic. That's the thing, because when my husband and I are sitting, after the boys go to bed and we're winding down, I don't want to be on my phone. I try and keep my phone tucked away. And so now it's just nice that I can sit down and I can just start stitching, and I can just feel the stress start to melt away as I'm doing all this handwork.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to release this, the new product out to the world. And I hope people enjoy it as much as I have, just because it's really, really, truly is it's really helped me with my recovery.
And I want to make sure we get to your recommendations quickly. So, you've got a few. So you were saying that you're counting down the days for Ted Lasso season 2, which starts up next month. It sounds like I have not.
July 23rd.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about why you like it.
Oh, are you kidding? It's such a great show.
I haven't watched it. Okay.
Oh my gosh, Abby, you have to watch it.
I know. I'm terrible. I don't watch television, so I am totally out of the loop on everything good. It's bad. I know.
This is the one show I'm going to say, please watch it. Watch one episode.
Okay.
I remember a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you need to watch this," and I was like, and then my husband and I started it, and we were like, "This is amazing."
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I think it showed up in the perfect time that the world needed a bit of a happy story. And it's just the characters and the people and the storyline. It's an amazing show. It is such a great show.
Okay.
So please watch at least one episode.
Okay. And you're going to get me hooked. And then you were saying that you are enjoying also going to the pool with your boys to avoid the Texas heat.
Yes. It is brutal. It's brutal in the summertime, and you're either inside in the air conditioner, or you're at a pool, at a friend's pool or a community pool, or you're at the beach or wherever. So it's been fun. And my boys are in swim lessons. They're 14 months, and my oldest is soon to be 3. So it's been fun to see them. It's just fun to be with them in the water and just watch them splash and play and have fun, and it keeps us all cool. So I'm tired. Let's not forget that.
I know. Kids who go swimming, they come home and they sleep so well. That is always the best trick.
Yes, 100%. So that check all the boxes where you're energy is depleted. They're tired. They've had fun. They're outdoors. We've all stayed cool. So.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Well, Kristi, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you, Abby. Appreciate it.
And you've been listening to the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today's podcast was brought to you by Schiffer Craft. Since 1973, Schiffer Publishing has provided the craft industry with world-renowned authors and insightful books, with topics ranging from ceramics to fiber and textiles, floral design, glass art, woodworking, metal craft, and more. Turn to Schiffer Craft for expert knowledge and inspiration. Thank you so much, Schiffer Craft. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals. And when you become a member of Craft Industry Alliance, you get in-depth coverage of craft industry news, the opportunity to connect with fellow professionals for advice and support, and access to an educational library filled with ideas, tools, and resources to help you as you build your business. Join us at craftindustrｙalliance.org. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.